Princess William had always spoken about his grandmother with a kind of quiet warmth that revealed far more than any official statement ever could. "I do miss my grandmother," he once admitted softly, "especially at Windsor. For me, Windsor was her. Sometimes I'd stop by just for tea because nobody made tea like she did. You never left hungry." But what no one understood at the time was that those quiet visits weren't only about family memories. Behind the palace walls, Queen Elizabeth II was already preparing one final decision, a decision so carefully engineered that when it finally surfaced in early 2026, it shook the monarchy from the inside out. On February 3, 2026, Buckingham Palace released what appeared to be an ordinary statement, barely 2 paragraphs, no dramatic language, no ceremonial announcement. Yet within minutes, senior royal staff realized the implications were explosive. Prince William had officially become the sole guardian of one of the monarchy's most secretive private estates, not Balmoral, not Sandringham, something far older, far more hidden. An estate Queen Elizabeth had protected in silence for decades. And, according to palace insiders, when Queen Camilla and her son Tom Parker Bowles learned what had been transferred entirely into William's hands, and more importantly, what had deliberately been kept away from them, the atmosphere inside royal residences turned ice cold almost instantly. This wasn't simply about land or money. It was about legacy, power, control, and Queen Elizabeth's final strategic move from beyond the grave. The hidden Cedar Estate. To understand the shockwave this created, you have to go back to 1944. Britain was deep inside the Second World War. Bombs were falling, the monarchy itself faced uncertainty. During that period, King George VI quietly acquired a secluded estate buried within the Chiltern Hills along the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire border. It was known simply as the Cedar Estate. But unlike other royal properties, this one was never publicly celebrated. No press release, no royal registry spotlight, no ceremonial unveiling. For over 80 years, the Cedar Estate existed almost like a ghost inside the royal system. Only a handful of senior courtiers even knew its full significance. Which raises the obvious question, why would the royal family hide an estate for nearly a century? The answer stunned even longtime royal historians. Internal archive notes later revealed the estate housed extraordinary royal artifacts and wartime records, including a private memorial chapel honoring royal family members who served in war, hidden archival chambers filled with confidential correspondence, and dozens of previously unseen royal portraits. But perhaps most astonishing of all were sealed audio recordings involving Queen Elizabeth II herself in private discussions with world leaders including Winston Churchill, Ronald Reagan, Nelson Mandela, and Charles de Gaulle. One royal archivist described the collection with a phrase nobody forgot afterward. "This wasn't a museum," he said quietly. "It was the monarchy's private memory." And here's where the story becomes even more revealing. Between 2017 and 2021, Prince William had reportedly been visiting the Cedar Estate in complete privacy, not for publicity, not for ceremonies. He walked the grounds with the Queen herself. He cataloged wartime documents. He reviewed naval dispatches. He helped preserve aging archive rooms. This was not symbolic royal duty. It was stewardship. And Queen Elizabeth noticed every detail. Inside one handwritten annotation later discovered within the estate's covenant paperwork, the Queen reportedly wrote, "He will inherit more than the crown. He will inherit the silence that protected it." A legal fortress hidden in plain sight. Now here's what made the transfer nearly impossible to challenge. The Cedar Estate did not belong to the Crown Estate. It was not controlled by the Duchy of Cornwall. Instead, Queen Elizabeth had quietly placed it inside a private covenant trust established years earlier under highly confidential legal protections. The trust included delayed activation clauses designed to trigger only after 2 conditions were met: the conclusion of the Queen's state funeral, and William's formal recognition as heir to institutional responsibility. By February 2026, both conditions had already been fulfilled. The official statement from the palace sounded simple enough. Under the sealed covenant established by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the Cedar estate shall pass in full guardianship to His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. Simple words, permanent consequences. Because while William received the estate quietly, others reportedly reacted very differently. Camilla and Tom's private plans. Multiple palace sources later claimed that Queen Camilla and Tom Parker Bowles had spent years attempting to gain influence over the Cedar estate. Camilla allegedly supported plans for what she described as a royal cultural legacy center, complete with curated historical experiences, elite literary gatherings, and culinary showcases tied to British heritage. On the surface, it sounded respectable. But Tom reportedly saw something entirely different: a business empire. Leaked planning discussions allegedly included luxury dining experiences, heritage food branding, private hospitality events, and exclusive retreat concepts tied directly to royal imagery. And then came the moment that reportedly alarmed William's circle the most. In late 2025, legal advisors connected to Tom allegedly explored whether parts of the Cedar estate could be reclassified under public heritage law. If successful, it could weaken William's exclusive authority over the property and potentially open the door to shared management structures. To royal traditionalists, it crossed a dangerous line. Because for Queen Elizabeth, these estates were never supposed to become commercial playgrounds. William reportedly refused every attempt to dilute Queen Elizabeth's original vision, quietly, firmly, without public drama. And then, according to insiders, he formally activated the Covenant Trust. Northacre Hall, the estate Camilla thought was hers. The Cedar estate wasn't the only property involved. Days earlier, another transfer quietly appeared inside land registry updates: Northacre Hall, a sprawling heritage property surrounded by ancient countryside, historically used for private royal gatherings and diplomatic retreats. What made the transfer extraordinary was timing. Documents reportedly showed Queen Elizabeth had personally reclassified the estate shortly before her death, moving it out of broader institutional control and into a private sovereign holding. That decision allowed her to transfer it directly through private succession rather than standard royal channels. In one handwritten appendix, she allegedly wrote, "Let Northacre remain with the child who carries the burden of our future." The move bypassed several senior royals entirely, and according to palace insiders, Camilla had already been discussing private development concepts connected to the estate by 2023. Luxury hospitality, culinary branding, boutique heritage experiences backed by outside investors. One internal proposal reportedly imagined transforming the estate into a high-end environmental retreat operation. But by the time those discussions accelerated, it was already too late. The Queen's legal protections had already been finalized. And when leaked documents exposing commercial concepts tied to Clarence Hill reportedly reached senior officials, backlash exploded behind palace walls. William's response was said to be brief but devastating. "Clarence Hill does not exist to be branded or sold," he reportedly told Camilla during a private confrontation. "It exists to protect my grandmother's legacy." Within days, proposed business entities connected to the project quietly disappeared. Greystone Downs, where the battle turned ugly. If Clarence Hill was emotional, Greystone Downs became outright war. The estate itself was extraordinary: hundreds of acres of ancient woodland, a Tudor-era hunting lodge, and a centuries-old chapel preserved almost exactly as Queen Elizabeth wanted. To William, the property symbolized restraint, tradition, and continuity. To Camilla and Tom, insiders claim it represented massive untapped value: massive targeted tourism experiences, ultra-exclusive hospitality programs, curated luxury experiences aimed at wealthy international elites. Plans reportedly became so advanced that legal teams allegedly searched for loopholes allowing shared management structures tied to heritage collaboration. But Queen Elizabeth had anticipated that possibility years earlier. A sealed clause tied specifically to Greystone Downs reportedly prohibited any commercial transformation without William's direct approval. When Camilla allegedly read the clause for the first time, one palace staffer later recalled an unforgettable moment of silence. Then, according to the source, Camilla quietly muttered, "Even now she still controls the board." William responded without public statements or interviews. Instead, days later, cameras captured William and Catherine walking through Greystone Downs with George, Charlotte, and Louis at sunset. No speeches, no drama, just the future king standing on land his grandmother trusted him to protect.
The Queen's legal protections had already been finalized, and when leaked documents exposing commercial concepts tied to Clarence Hill reportedly reached senior officials, backlash exploded behind palace walls. William's response was said to be brief but devastating. "Clarence Hill does not exist to be branded or sold," he reportedly told Camilla during a private confrontation. "It exists to protect my grandmother's legacy." Within days, proposed business entities connected to the project quietly disappeared. Greystone Downs, where the battle turned ugly. If Clarence Hill was emotional, Greystone Downs became outright war. The estate itself was extraordinary, hundreds of acres of ancient woodland, a Tudor-era hunting lodge, and a centuries-old chapel preserved almost exactly as Queen Elizabeth wanted it. To William, the property symbolized restraint, tradition, and continuity. To Camilla and Tom, insiders claim it represented massive, untapped value. Private eco-retreats, ultra-exclusive hospitality programs, curated luxury experiences aimed at wealthy international elites. Plans reportedly became so advanced that legal teams allegedly searched for loopholes allowing shared custodianship structures tied to heritage collaboration. But Queen Elizabeth had anticipated that possibility years earlier. A sealed clause tied specifically to Greystone Downs reportedly prohibited any commercial transformation without William's direct approval. When Camilla allegedly read the clause for the first time, one palace staff member later recalled an unforgettable moment of silence. Then, according to the source, Camilla quietly muttered, "Even now she still controls the board." William responded without public statements or interviews. Instead, days later, cameras captured William and Catherine walking through Greystone Downs with George, Charlotte, and Louis at sunset. No speeches, no drama, just the future king standing quietly on land his grandmother trusted him to protect. Greenheath, the final humiliation. Then came Greenheath Estate, over 500 acres of protected woodland attached to a private financial trust reportedly worth tens of millions of pounds. According to insiders, Camilla initially underestimated the estate completely, assuming it was ceremonial land with little strategic value. She was wrong. Queen Elizabeth had quietly built a massive trust around Greenheath for years, designed specifically to fund environmental education and child rehabilitation initiatives under William and Catherine's stewardship. But by the time Camilla reportedly realized its true value, Princess Anne had already finalized the transfer structures. And then came the moment that reportedly ended any remaining hopes of reversal. A private recording of Queen Elizabeth herself was delivered alongside the estate documents. In it, the Queen allegedly explained her wishes in her own voice, making absolutely clear that Greenheath was never intended for commercial exploitation. According to palace leaks, discussions about challenging the Queen's judgment legally were immediately shut down after King Charles privately warned that attacking Elizabeth's intentions would trigger catastrophic backlash against the monarchy itself. The public never saw those private meetings, but insiders say the tension inside Clarence House became unbearable. Oak Ridge, the Queen's final word. And finally came Oak Ridge Estate, perhaps the most symbolic property of all. Unlike the larger royal residences, Oak Ridge was intensely personal to Queen Elizabeth, a quiet retreat where she escaped family conflict and reflected privately for decades. It was also where William reportedly spent some of his happiest childhood summers. Hidden within the estate library was one final handwritten passage from Elizabeth herself. "If ever this estate is challenged, let it be known that Oak Ridge belongs not to power, but to patience." That line reportedly silenced the room when it was read aloud to senior royals. Because by then, everyone understood what Queen Elizabeth had really done. She hadn't merely distributed estates, she had built an impenetrable shield around William. Every trust, every clause, every covenant, every legal protection, all carefully designed years in advance to stop anyone from turning royal legacy into private commercial opportunity. And perhaps most importantly, she chose William because she believed he understood something others did not, that stewardship matters more than ownership. While others allegedly saw luxury brands, hospitality ventures, and commercial influence, William spent his time preserving archives, restoring forgotten records, and quietly listening to an aging queen explain why history mattered. That was the difference. As dawn broke across Windsor in February 2026, the monarchy entered a completely new era. William walked those estates not as trophies, but as responsibilities. George asked questions about history, Charlotte carried journals through ancient hallways, and William reportedly answered them with the calm certainty of someone who finally understood the weight his grandmother had entrusted him. Camilla's ambitions were not simply blocked, they were structurally impossible. Every proposal had been anticipated, every legal path closed, every challenge neutralized years before it even appeared. One longtime palace footman summarized the entire saga in a single sentence. He said quietly, "This wasn't inheritance, it was the Queen's final chess move." And according to those who witnessed it unfold, it was flawless.